Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel Mayday Sun Gaming, and today we're talking about optics and airsoft and which one you should get depending on your playstyle and what you like and your goals, of course. So to jump right into it, we're going to talk about the first type of optic, which is your iron sights. So this one is a very subjective kind of opinion because a lot of people don't actually use the optics in airsoft. I've seen some people just use sticks with nothing on them. I've seen people use just straight up rails, and I've seen people use optics on their guns here in Japan. And one of my friends, actually, what he tells me is that he really knows where his gun kind of shoots, and he just follows the BBs. And yes, that works for CQB as well. But I think for me personally, like outdoor and anything beyond 20 meters, I'd like to use an optic. But even in CQB, I like to use an optic, just because it is that muscle memory. And you know, even though BBs can be inconsistent, well, they are inconsistent. It's nice to know that your BBs are going in that general area, especially when you're trying to peek little tiny slivers of people in CQB. So first up is, I guess technically no optic and no iron sights. But let's talk about iron sights. So iron sights, they're great for still moving targets, in my honest opinion. For moving targets, I personally don't like them because it's hard to track. And it really depends, in my opinion, in my experience, it depends on the type of iron sight that you're using. So what you want to pay attention to is the back sight. So depending on the aperture or the size of the hole will really change how effective, I guess, your iron sight is in a variety of situations. So I know for like outside, maybe, where it's bright outside and targets are a little farther away and they're not moving so much because they're farther away, so the perceived movement of them is slower. Maybe something like this, like on the M4A1, where you have a small aperture, is okay, and it's okay to use them. But considering it is such a small sight, you have to likely close one eye, at least for a little bit, in order to focus on that front sight through this tiny little aperture. So target acquisition is a lot slower. Tracking is a lot harder because of the back sights, you know, in your eye, and you can't really see. And then it can get a little jarring when especially when you're trying to shoot left-handed, and that can be really hard without a lot of practice and training in your house and just transitioning over and using that as well. And also eye relief as well, and angle. So you can't just look at it from any angle. You have to be on the precise cheek weld in order to see through that sight. Now that can be hard. Now, that being said, you have sights like the MP5 where you have the hooded sights, right? I just pointed the gun at myself. Oh my God. So anyway, don't worry, it's not loaded, it's a toy. So you have sights like this where you can adjust the aperture on the end, right? So you want to have big for low light situations or very precise for small ones like this. So, you know, iron sights like these are pretty good. Like you'll have that nice cheek weld and you can see through the big hood. And of course, BB variation doesn't really matter, but depending on the iron sight, it can change. Something like the MP5K has an even bigger aperture. It doesn't even have like little circles. It's just a, you know, an open little rook chess piece looking thing. So this one is fine to use as well, and you still have that nice hooded front sight as well, so it's easy to see through. Then you have something like M-bus style. So you have flip up sights that can go up like this, and these ones tend to have big apertures on the end, which you can do for precision and CQB low light situations, and they're adjustable as well for windage and elevation. Not so much, to be honest. You need a special tool to do that. And that's kind of my biggest issue with iron sights, is that there isn't, like, I know in the real steel world, like, you can adjust all those things, but there isn't much room to zero in a BB and adjust for your hop to go beyond what the iron sight can do. What I was struggling with the other day at the AK event was my optic was down, so I had to use the iron sights in the AK, but I wanted to get the BB right on the tip of the front sight, on the front post. So my issue was that if I did that, that front post was zeroed for like 20 meters. So anything beyond that, I was just looking and using the iron sight more as a reference point for the BB rather than it being, you know, the spot where the BB hits. So that's usually what happens when you're using iron sights, because this is airsoft and there's variations in the flight path of the BB and the hop and not being able to adjust your iron sights as well. So which is why I don't recommend to use iron sights for long range shooting or tracking enemies that are super far. For CQB, yeah, especially if you're using tracers, you can just follow those BBs, blah, blah, blah. But I'm more of a player that likes to have their shots very deliberate, and I know where I'm shooting. And I like to use, you know, the training that I've done in quarantine, watching Ronin Tactics and T-Rex Arms videos of, you know, how to present your weapon, look down your sight, and present properly. Speaking of which, let's talk about the first type of optic, which is the reflex sight. So the reflex sight, the one that you get in Call of Duty 4, Electrostar, whatever you call it. This sight was my very first sight, and I like this one particularly because it's cheap. You can get it for like 30 bucks. It's good enough for indoors, not good enough for outdoors because it's cheap. So the red dot, you won't be able to see it even on the max setting. It also has the green setting. It also doesn't have a battery in here, so can't see. And it also has adjustable zeros, so you can change you know, the right and the left, and you can change the up and the down, and it's using springs to actually move you know, the sight around in order to do your zero. It also comes with 4 patterns, which is what I like. It has the regular dot, the circle dot, it has the cross, and it has like a cross and a circle in the middle. It's like a bootleg EOTech, but looks nothing like an EOTech at all. The good thing about this sight is that it's really good for CQB. So there is no tube, there's no housing, so it's a nice open sight so you can see all around you, and you should be aiming with both eyes open. If you're aiming with one eye open, get out. No, I'm joking, but yeah, no, seriously, aim with both eyes open. That's the whole point, right? Because you're gonna be closing your eye for the iron sight. The whole point of the optic here is to not close your eye. So anyway, so you have an open aperture. You can see everything. Has the most eye relief. You can kind of just see around, look around. There's probably doo-doo parallax though, because it's cheap, right? But I guess you have if you have a legit reflex sight, then it'll be fine. But to be honest with you, it's nice to have this nice open sight and see all around you for CQB. And it's on a built-in riser, so it should be able to clear normal M-bus, you know, normal M-bus kind of iron sights, at least with an absolute co-witness, which means the dot is going to be lined up with the iron sight's front post. Exactly. But most of the time, I think even like on an MP5 hooded sight, you'll be able to clear it completely. So this sight is good for CQB and a nice open sight for your peripherals and stuff like that. The next one I'm going to talk about is the standard T1 type on a riser. So you can also put this on a low mount as well, but I'm talking about the riser version of your T1. So the good thing about the T1 is that there's a lot of technology in the replica world to make a good T1 sight. And to be honest with you, I like these because of that reason. You can get a lot of good shields for it. There's a lot of good models. There's a lot of real steel options that are affordable in the T1 area. And they generally are the standard here in Japan. And they come with the riser. So one thing I like about this sight here is that it's bright enough and it has different adjustments to actually be usable outside if you get a decent one that's over like $50, $70 or something like that. This one particularly here has adjustable zeros without the use of a tool. You can just go ahead and run those dials. And this one is pretty durable if you get a good one to withstand the blowback of a gas blowback rifle. And what's important about the T1 sight is that there's more restriction when it comes to looking through it. So just like the aperture on the M4, on the back sight, there's a tiny little hole and you have to kind of be right on the hole to see through it. And it's just the same thing for this, but except the hole is way bigger. Unlike a reflex sight where you have a bigger window and more of a leeway when you're looking at it from an angle, as opposed to this, you don't have that much leeway. So this does encourage better shooting form in order to find that dot immediately, because sometimes if you don't have the shooting form on point, you won't be able to find the dot for a while, and that could be, you know, like a deciding factor between life and death in the airsoft world. So being able to encourage good shooting form and good presentation with the red dot is good on these. Now, the good thing about this as well is if you have an airsoft gun that has a fixed front sight like the MWS, this may be able to clear it and you'll have a lower third or absolute co-witness, and you actually be able to see through your red dot and not have something in the way, which is really nice with the T1. That being said, T1s usually don't have different patterns of reticles, and they just have the regular dot, and that can be a little tough for people who like to have the different options. So just know that you're getting a T1, you're just gonna get a dot, basically. And especially when it comes to left-hand shooting, you gotta be able to have that form as well, as we talked about earlier. Now, the third type is the EOTech type. So this EOTech type, it's okay. So the problem with the EOTechs in the replica world is that they're usually doo-doo munch crunch, and they have a lot of tint, and you can't really see the dot as well, depending on the replica that you get. This replica here was like $100, and it's like the best in the industry, and even then it's pretty doo-doo munch crunch. So the one thing I do like about the EOTech is that, one, it has a quick detach if you're getting the EXPX. So if you get the EXPX and you can just quick detach it on there like this, and it'll fit on there. This is actually, I don't have the screw done properly, but you can just quick attach it rather than using screws every time. So the good thing about the EOTech is that, one, it clears most front post optics, which is good. So you can either have a lower third co-witness or just a super clear picture, which is nice. And it also clears PEC boxes. So the thing that I like about the EOTech is, of course, the big viewing window. And I know that you have both eyes open. You're gonna have both eyes open, so it doesn't really matter. I won't see the casing, but subconsciously you kind of do see it. But what's good about this is that you have that big window to see your reticle, right? So it's not a small little circle, it's like a big square. And then when you look through it, you have way more peripheral vision while looking through the optic. Even though you have both eyes open, it's kind of this weird peripheral vision that you can see, and there's way more you can see with the EOTech's viewing window, which is a big selling point for it. And the next selling point for it is the reticle. So the reticle is a big circle with a 1 MOA center dot, and that is a goddamn godsend in CQB. And you may think that reticle, oh, it's so big and I can't see anything. Like I use it in Modern Warfare and I can't see anything. That's because they have the brightness setting so high for some reason in I guess for balance, I suppose. But when you have the brightness perfect and you have it right for the lighting around you, that is a super great donut of death that when you pull up your rifle, you can see that almost so quickly, and it's super fast for its acquisition, which is why I think it's popular in the real steel applications in the army and stuff like that, because of that acquisition for CQB. No, it doesn't have a 1.75 zoom. It is a 1x reticle, and that acquisition when you're picking it up is really, really, really good, and that viewing window as well. The only bad thing about EOTechs in the replica world is that they're usually garbage. They lose their zero. They have a lot of tint, and I cannot use this thing outside because it's too bright, and the reticle for some reason is not bright enough. I don't know what the technology is. Why can a T1 be able to go up to 11, and then this one can barely handle the sun outside on a sunny day? So that's why I don't like the EOTechs in the replica world. If you're living in Japan like me and you want to get a real steel holosight, one, that's going to cost you $1,500, and two, it can still get shot out just like any other optic here in Japan. So got to be careful with that. And one of my irks about this, and I talked about this with the T1, is that they have good protectors. The holosight, they're just so far in between. This one is like the best one without having to modify it to fit into the window, but it breaks in like one shot. So if someone were to burst shot me, 3-tap me, and shoot this 3 times, this thing is done, right? So that's what I'm kind of worried about when it comes to the EOTech. And a lot of times, the EOTechs also have an auto shut-off function as well. So you might be in the middle of the game and then your thing just shuts off, so it's like crap. What I do like about it, though, is that you can zero pretty easily. So as a replica, it's good for cosplay and maybe CQB. For outdoors, useless. Yeah, because replicas are pretty bad for EOTechs, but they are tactical, super tactical. Now, out of these 3 optics, there is a dilemma, okay? So it's either A, you get the good viewing window, a great reticle, but terrible quality, terrible tint, and not bright enough for outside EOTech replica. You get a T1 that only has a one option for your reticle, a pretty strict viewing angle, but has really good technology, really good protectors, and are able to withstand, you know, recoil for the most part if you get a good one, and a riser, and also options for low mount. And then you also have the reflex sight, which is an open, very open sight, has different reticles, but they're usually garbage because they can't hold zeros and stuff like that, so they're not good for gas blowbacks and stuff like that. Now, that's the problem with replicas, okay? And it's the problem with the different styles, and each one have their pros and cons. Now, which one have I gone for in the end? Well, I started with this, then I moved to this, and then I moved to this, right? And then I was like, when I started using my gas blowback rifle and I started playing outside more, I found that this wasn't bright enough. I found that this one, why don't I like this one? Oh, this one is not high enough. And then this one is just unusable, so I don't use it. So, how do you get the best of both worlds? I really like the reticle of the EOTech, but I really like the performance of the Vector. But this is not high enough to clear the iron sight. This is high enough to clear the iron sight. This can go pound sand. And what we have here is the Holosun 503 CU Circle Dot. Okay, now this sight is the best of both worlds for me in what I like to do in airsoft. Now, why this optic? Well, this is a real steel optic. It's a Holosun, and I think in the American world, Holosun is like pretty low tier and it's just a kind of decent doo-doo budget optic. But here in Japan, when it comes to replicas versus real steel, this is probably some premium stuff, right? This costed me $400 maybe. So what do I like about this optic? So what I like about it is that it's real steel, so it can handle recoil, obviously. If it couldn't, then it's not real steel. It's also very, very bright, okay? So it can handle outside, and it also has auto adjusting as well, but I turned that off because it's kind of annoying, and also has solar panels as well. But what I do like about it is that this has the option for the EOTech reticle and the option for a regular dot. And that to me is very important. And it has also a slightly wider aperture when it comes compared to you know, the regular T1 versus this. It's a little bit bigger to compensate for the size of the EOTech reticle, or the EOTech reticle. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. You could probably go with the 510C, the one that looks like the operator reflex sight from Modern Warfare, but that costs like $600 here in Japan. And it's kind of hard to find optic protectors for that. So a nice T1 good balance is the Holosun here. So real steel optic is probably the best investment you can make. Do I recommend it? Yes. Do I suggest you get one when you're first starting out? No, it's way too expensive. You don't even know if you're into the hobby yet, right? So it's good to start with something that is more affordable. But if you can, and you like the EOTech reticle, and you like the performance and the technology of a T1, and have something that's a little bit more affordable than a $1,500 EOTech, then maybe the Holosun 5S 503 CU is for you. And it's very lightweight, and it has the best of both worlds, the EOTech optic, and it also has the dot and the brightness to withstand outside, and some other bells and whistles. So that's basically it, guys. We have your most affordable option, your mid-tier good option that has a lot of good features and solid builds for the price, and super cool cosplay tactical EOTech awesome features but doo-doo munch crunch quality replicas that are expensive. And then you have the real steel optic, which can have the best of both worlds, or just a regular T1 if you wanted to just go with the regular T1. And don't get an EOTech for airsoft, because that costs like $1,500 unless you're going in from the States. If you have one, then yes, but make sure you get a good protector. But moral of the story is, guys, red dots are much better than iron sights in the world of airsoft. Oh, you can be so precise with the iron sights. Yeah, you're shooting at a target that's not shooting back at you, and you're shooting at a target that's not moving, then yes, you have all the time in the world to shoot. You're going against a timer. But when you're in battle, it's better to have an optic for that acquisition speed. And depending on your play style and what you like to do, you have these options here. There's also the RMR. The RMR is kind of like the small version of a reflex sight and a mix of a T1. It's like a little baby, so I'll put a picture up here. I don't personally own one From what I've heard, they're lightweight. They usually need a riser to clear irons, and you have to go really hard down. They're good for like pistols and stuff like that, and it can be a little hard to find the dot. So I don't know. I wouldn't. I'd rather just get a reflex sight or something, or a T1 or an EOTech. But anyway, guys, I've been sitting here for like 21 minutes, so I guess that's it. But anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. Which optic do you use? Which do you prefer? And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.